Langley Speedway.
Yeah, and a couple of things. Now, obviously, the Hampton Heat is coming up here in July, but we have our own version of Heat coming into Hampton, featuring a couple of the big head honchos. Well, I shouldn't say the head honchos, but a couple of the big players in the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, looking at Justin Johnson and Bobby McCarty. And Johnson starts in the front row, McCarty back mid-pack, but you look at those stats. They are 1 and 2 in the points, Steve, but a couple of things stick out. 1, consistency, and 2, being up front.
They're great stories. Bobby McCarty, you see him there on the right of the screen. Bobby is a 2-time champion, right now one of the top drivers in the Tour. Justin Johnson, he'd been on the Tour for quite a while. He got his first win on the Tour this year, and he backed it up with a win at Caraway. So a great story this year with Justin Johnson, and historically now, when you look at the last 3 or 4 years, the championship, Bobby McCarty's going to be a player in it, and here they are, clashing meeting here tonight, our very own version of Hampton Heat here in the Cars Tour, Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour here tonight. And there you see the point standings. Bobby McCarty is the leader. Deke McCaskill, just very, very consistent, very strong. You mentioned it, Justin Johnson, only 3 top 5s. That's where that consistency paired with the 2 wins has him in good shape, but not in as good a shape point-wise as Deke McCaskill and Bobby McCarty.
Yeah, 15 points the gap, and that's a pretty sizable gap as far as Cars Tour points are concerned. We're about halfway through the season, and Bobby is just edging himself forward, but you look at Deke and Justin, and there's still a long way to go this season. Anything can and probably will happen. Let's head down to the third member of our team, Brandon Brown, with some pre-race notes coming into the Visit Hampton 125.
Yeah, it was a lot more eventful time for this DGR crew of Joe Valento than they wanted it. Had to rebuild the entire rear end of the car, took the axle completely out. Right here, you can see this axle is pretty worse for wear, and they actually took it apart, put it back together, and he is back out there, and they say that car is good to go. Back to you guys.
Yeah, I'm a radio guy, but I don't think that's what you're looking for with your rear axle. That is one continuous piece that is now 2, and even the 2 pieces are bent and contorted. So good to have Joe back out there running the David Gilliland Racing team. He's going to start deep in the field, but good to have him out here and back up and running here this afternoon.
The other thing, too, with Joe is that's the second axle issue we have seen amongst teams in the last 2 races. Josh Berry had an axle issue that put him out at Caraway. Now Joe Valento, the similar type deal. I don't know who they run for a vendor. They might be totally separate vendors. They might be not even related, but it's always funny to see how parts get tested in waves, Steve. There are certain areas of the car teams try to make speed, and for a few weeks, they start breaking those parts until they get a little bit better.
I've said all along, in dealing with crew chiefs and those in the NASCAR garage with my duties on Motor Racing Network, I've said all along, this sport is about finding the weakest link. And that's what happens in this sport. We've talked about that, especially like a short track like Martinsville. The braking was the weakest point. Well, then we had the transmissions, and then we have this, and they push everything. It's the same thing on the Cars Tour. They push those axles right to the limit, and you know, with this being the second axle failure, every crew chief, every team owner in that pit area knows where that axle came from, and they're watching to see if it's a second one or if it's 2 unique individual problems. It's just the nature of racing at this level.
Certainly is. Looking at our RNS race cars, rookie contenders on the screen, you see Caden Honeycutt, the commanding lead in the rookie standings, but keep an eye not only on him, but all 5 of these rookies. We talked about Joe Valento, Connor Jones, and a new car this week, the 88 of Dale Jr., previously in the 21 for GMS Racing. So Connor Jones, keep an eye on him. Again, Butler, Silvestri, all very, very talented drivers here in 2021.
The future is good, that's for sure.
The Solid Rock Carriers pace car will make its way off the racing surface for 125 green flag laps. Through turns 3 and 4. Off the racetrack, the pace car goes, and through the KRC Power Steering start zone, Caden Honeycutt and Justin Johnson lead the field into turn 1, and we are green.
Honeycutt gets the big advantage. Justin Johnson working the high side of the speedway. They're side by side for the 3rd spot. Up to speed now into turn number 3.
Lap 1 to Caden Honeycutt, and you see back there the third GXS Wraps car. Stephen Dunn from GXS couldn't be here today. He sent me a text earlier, said, we're home watching. He said, what about those GXS cars in the front row? Well, right now, Stephen, you're 3 out of the top 4. And that McCaskill guy, well, he's just good everywhere. We like Deke no matter what. But very quickly, Steve, this field getting single file all the way back through Layne Riggs and company, about the 8th or 9th spot.
Yeah, that's Sam Yarborough down on the inside of Layne Riggs. They're running for about the 8th spot, but really rolling now. This is the logging lap portions. How is your race car? Let's get situated. We had just a qualifying run earlier on, practice earlier today in the heat and the sunshine. Now we're determining how good your race car is and what we're going to need to do on that race car as we continue on. Caden Honeycutt, he's led a lot of laps here in the last couple races, was the dominant car the last race out at Caraway. A late race caution put him in the mix, and unfortunately it was a third place finish, what looked like was a win. So Honeycutt has certainly found his footing in that Justin Johnson racing car. He's got the boss man about 2 car lengths behind him down in turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, and this really isn't a surprise, I think, for Caden Honeycutt, because the thing he told me this weekend was, yeah, he'd have loved to have had the win at Caraway, but what he learned up front running Bobby McCarty and understanding his pace was to understand how he could pace his race car, how much he could use, how much he had to use, and for that matter, how much he needed to have left at the end of the race. And even if he didn't win that race, they always say you've got to lose them before you can win them. That may have been everything he needed, because he's in perfect position here in the first 7 laps.
17-year-old racer from down in Willow Park, Texas. When you look at his finishes this year, 12th in the opener at Dillon, 9th at Hickory, and listen to this, 10th, 7th, and 3rd. So his trajectory, he has certainly pointed in the right direction. And as we talked about that race at Caraway, he was stout. 17-year-old, he's been racing for about the last 7 or 8 years, started in the Bandoleros, Legends cars, made some dirt track racing, and actually finished 5th last year at the Snowball Derby, that iconic race at Five Flag Speedway. So Caden Honeycutt is one of those names to watch when we go forward, and there's one of those names to watch when we're here tonight. It was 2 car lengths. It's down to 1, though, as Justin Johnson is starting to turn up the heat a little bit, and Deke McCaskill is right there. McCaskill, he won here 2 years ago. He certainly knows his way to victory lane here at Langley Speedway. He's licking his chops back there in the 3rd spot.
That he is, and it's starting to tighten up just a little bit there, the top 4 cars or so. By the way, if you're watching on social, I want to let you know that you've got about 15. Oh, we've got problems. Back straightaway, Matt Waltz is in the grass, and I see smoke, and that usually is not good on a race car. Looks like he'll get the car refired perhaps and pull away, but that will bring out the first caution with 10 laps complete. Was about to say, if you're watching on social, we're going to give you the first, 25 laps or so of this one as a freebie. If you want to watch the rest of it, you got to go to the address on the bottom of the frame at www.carstour.tv.
Matt Waltz gets that car fired back up, making his return to racing down here, as he is good to see him back here at the racetrack. And we'll see what happens, as looks like Brandon Brown's making his way down there to see what the story is on Matt Waltz getting back behind the wheel of the race car. And one of the big stories coming into this one. Also see Mason Diaz coming down pit road as well. So Diaz is into the attention of his crew. Matt Waltz hasn't made it in, I don't believe, to his pit box. No, he remains out on the racetrack. So we'll see what the story is there as well. But Mason Diaz is now into the attention of his crew. They're working under the rear end of that automobile. So lots and lots happening here in the early laps here. There you see the Solid Rock Carriers number 24 car of Mason Diaz getting the assist down here with the crew, with jacking the car up and working under the rear end of that automobile. Making a shock adjustment, it looks like, or a spring or a shock adjustment, it looks like, and they're adjusting the shock up underneath the left rear of that car. Obviously, Mason Diaz not happy with the handling of that race car, and so it is a shock adjustment, and now they're going to go around and do the same thing, shock adjustment on the right side as well. So Mason Diaz early in the pit area here as we're under caution, but 10 laps have been completed. We have got a 115 to go. Field getting the signal one more time, and we'll go back to green. Track caution lights all the way around. The Larry King laws, Langley Speedway, have been extinguished, so we're getting ready to go back to green flag racing action here with 10 laps in the books.
Yeah, just enough time, Steve, to get an idea of what's going to happen perhaps. Everybody got a chance to kind of whet their appetite, and we're about ready to see what could happen for the next 115 laps. Something tells me this is not the last caution flag that we are going to see here this afternoon and this evening. The Solid Rock Carriers pace car makes the hard left turn off turn number 4 and through the KRC power steering restart zone. Caden Honeycutt again, quick to the gas, will lead the field off into turn number 1. And look at that jump, 2-3 car lengths over everybody else.
Yeah, he's got a really good start. Now Deke McCaskill looking to the low side of the Justin Johnson car. McCaskill's down there, but Johnson now able to wrestle that second spot. They're side by side behind it. Minnie Terrell is there. Good to have Timothy Peters in that number 12 car down on the inside of the racetrack. They're battling for the 4th spot off from turn number 2. So great racing all the way back through the field here as your leaders, your front 3 cars have kind of gotten themselves single file. That side-by-side battle for the 3rd spot continues on with Timothy Peters and Minnie Terrell racing wheel to wheel at the front of the field. Looks like the boss man has decided it's time to go. It is Justin Johnson all over the back bumper of Caden Honeycutt.
Yeah, he is there, and that's the advantage of being the veteran if you're Justin Johnson. Perhaps giving a little bit of extra pressure to Caden Honeycutt. Sometimes the best way to teach a guy is to show him, and that may be what Justin Johnson's trying to do here. And a little bit further back, that black number 12 car, Timothy Peters, whoa, caught the apron there, de-wedged the race car, as he was a little bit sideways off turn 4. He's trying to make the bottom work right now.
Timothy Peters, his second start of the season here in the Cars Tour, and Minnie Terrell gets the advantage around the high side into that 4th spot. Peters back to 5th spot. Jared Fryer runs in the 6th spot. So right now everyone's kind of catching their breath a little bit, particularly Timothy Peters after that dirt tracking maneuver off turn number 4. Things have settled down just a little bit at the front of the field. Caden Honeycutt is the leader. Justin Johnson second. And the KG veteran Deke McCaskill sits in that 3rd spot.
Not a surprise at this point, I think, to see everybody just kind of chilling right now, kind of making laps for the most part, and that's usually a good thing when you have a chance to do that. Feel your race car out while we're watching this. Want to say hi to folks on social media, and if you're there, tell us where you're watching from, who you're cheering for, and you know what? Oh, look at that. Yeah, some folks say best short track, most challenging, great crowd. Well, Ian, we would love to be here 2 times a year, but we try to give everybody a little bit of love for that matter.
You talk about this racetrack, it's 0.397 miles, so it's 0.4 of a mile. The banking is only 6 degrees. I think they said this is the flattest racetrack in this region. That's in the turn, only 6 degrees, 4 degrees down the straightaways. So this is certainly flat track racing, and they put on a show here. Whether it's the Cars Tour or each and every Saturday night, they put on some great racing action, not only the late model stock division, but all the support divisions. This racetrack, 71 years old, this place has been hosting racing, and this just seems to get better and better. 6 degrees of banking, though, that is nothing to hold those cars down into the corner.
It is not a whole lot, but it's Joe. Hello, further back there, top of the frame. Carroll and Jones. I don't know what happened there, but it nearly ended with Connor Jones getting shoved aside. And I know that kid. He does not take kindly to that. Does not matter who it is in front of him. And the veteran Terry Carroll just said, hey, kid, get out of my way. I don't want to deal with that. And, well, Connor learning that car, learning that team right now, trying to figure things out towards the tail of the field.
Yeah, working their way into turns 1 and 2. Back at the front of the field right now. Again, things have settled down and everyone is just logging laps. Let's jump back there again toward the tail end of the field. That's where it is. Sam Butler in that number 81 car. Daniel Silvestri, some sparks flying out of that 97 car. And there he is, Connor Jones, picking up the ride in the Junior Motorsports number 88 car here. And thus far, keeping the 4 fenders on the car. Riding toward the back of the field. We'll see how he fares as the race goes on. But Silvestri, just a lot of sparks coming out of that 97 machine.
Yeah, I don't know what he's dragging, but it's not a matter of the pressures being up or down, but clearly something hitting the racetrack that nobody else is really having to deal with. Let's see if we can get a shot of it here of our turn 3 camera. Yeah, right there underneath the right front wheel. It's almost like the cross member or something is hitting the racetrack. And it's possible, Steve, that they guessed wrong on how much travel they would have early, and maybe it's traveling a little too much. Yeah, but, boy, you don't want a body or a suspension piece grinding on the racetrack like that for that extended period of time. The racer out of Great Falls, Virginia, has one top 5 finish. Finished 5th spot up at Hickory in race number 2. Right now, though, he's got a handful of race car, and right directly behind him, Sam Butler, the 17-year-old, is trying to figure a way around. Well, I want to say hi to Tyler Carter. He loves seeing that manufacturer RNS up front, he says. Mackie Cole, pretty big fan as well, and they are leading the way right now. The top 4 or 5 cars, all from the RNS Race Cars shop. So clearly this is a racetrack that those cars tend to like, at least here in the early going. If you're watching on social, that's going to do it. We're going to flip the button. You want to see the rest of this, head on over